On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, become debt-free in less than 1 hour.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law. And what I wanted to talk about this week was my new book, Become Debt-Free in Less Than 1 Hour. Now, before I get to the meat of the book, those of you that have been listening a while, I do want to talk about our sponsor, Sam Cohen of Attorneys First Insurance. And so, as you know, Sam Cohen writes malpractice insurance, E&O insurance, or errors and omissions insurance for attorneys and title companies, both in Florida and outside the state of Florida in most states. Now, if you're in a state outside of Florida, and you want to see if Sam can write your insurance, either he can do it, or he can find someone who can do it, or he can become licensed to do it. Sam is my agent for purposes of this type of insurance, has been my agent for purposes of this type of insurance. He does a fantastic job. And so, again, if you want to contact Sam, it is sam@attorneysfirst.com or www.attorneysfirst.com if you're an attorney or title company that needs errors and omissions insurance, E&O insurance, or malpractice insurance. But the other thing that I've been talking about for a while now is that I wrote a new book called Become Debt-Free in Less Than 1 Hour. And I realized that I've been promoting the book in a lot of my episodes along with the sponsorship information, but never really told you what the book is or what it's about other than a little snippet here, a snippet there. So that's what I wanted to do, was really just explain my thought process in writing the book, what the book is about, how it came to be. So I want to take you back to 2012. And so I want you to imagine, actually I want to take you back further than that. So I grew up in a household where my father was the sole provider, sort of a traditional household. My father is a CPA. He was the sole provider for the family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She went to all the band practices and went to all the football games and went to all the band competitions and went to all the sports and took us to and from lessons and had dinner ready at the end of the day and basically took care of the house and took care of me and my sister while my dad was out working all the time. Very, very traditional household. And so that was the situation that I grew up in, was a very traditional. Dad goes out, he makes the money. You know, we were never rich by any stretch, but we weren't wanting for anything. So if I got good grades, if my sister got good grades, we generally got what we wanted for birthdays and holidays and, as treats and as special things and for accomplishments. I don't recall there ever being a time where my mom or dad said, we can't afford that. We took vacations on a regular basis, So again, by no means were we rich, but we did pretty good for the lifestyle that my dad was able to provide. So that was the environment in which I grew up. So imagine me coming home from work one day before Yesner Law, while I was at another law firm where I had law partners and associate attorneys and legal staff and non-legal staff. Imagine coming home from work one day. My wife, at that point, our son had just been born. Our first son had just been born. He was an infant. And imagine coming home from work one day and having to sit my wife down after the baby went to bed and say, honey, I think you need to get a job. I think you need to go back to work because I don't think my income is going to cut it. That is hard to say on this podcast, and it's hard to admit, but that's what happened. 2012, my son was born. 2011, my son was born. And 2012, I left the law firm that I had started back in 2004 and had started Yesner Law and was out on my own. And that day came where I had to come home and sit my wife down and tell her, look, I can't make enough money to support the family by myself. And it crushed me and it hurt. And it was one of the hardest conversations that I've ever had to have with my wife. Now, to her credit, she was unbelievably supportive. She did go out. She wanted to go back to work. I mean, I want to be in a household, in an environment where my wife can choose to go back to work if she wants to, but she doesn't have to. And so it crushed me to tell her that she had to. But to her credit, she wanted to. So she wanted to go back to work, and she wanted to make some money to help support the family. So it really wasn't as bad as I had imagined it in my head, although given the way that I grew up, it was a pretty hard conversation to have. And so she went back to work. I started Yesner Law. Yesner Law is doing great. Yesner Law is successful. My wife is still working, and there are some months where it's great that my wife is working, especially during COVID. And there's other months where my wife's income is more of gravy, more of a bonus to the family. So carry on for a couple of years. Most of you know I wrote my first book called Crushing Debt, which is gained from or created from the content that I had here in the Crushing Debt podcast. And so I wrote a book called Crushing Debt, 9 Strategies to Eliminate Financial Bullies. And that book came out in 2018. And that book has been great. That book has opened doors for me for speaking engagements. That book has opened doors for me for recognition, for social media recognition, for testimonials, for gaining clients, for helping to support the podcast. And so I'd always had, after the first book, after Crushing Debt, I'd always had the idea that I wanted to write a second book. And so I thought back to that conversation I had with my wife about, it's time, you need to get another job. I see the edge of the cliff coming where I don't know that I can support the family by myself. And so what I thought was, I sat down and I said, well, what am I good at? Well, I'm good at budgeting. I'm good at budgeting to help my clients, whether it's with a bankruptcy or a debt settlement or something like that. I'm good with budgeting my own personal finances. I'm good with budgeting the law firm's finances. And so I thought, you know what? Let me write a book about budgeting. And so I sat down and I started writing a book about budgeting. Well, one of the lines that I had in the Crushing Debt book, as I was writing book number 2, one of the lines that I had in the Crushing Debt book stuck with me. And that line is, at the end of the month, do you have more money? Or at the end of the money, do you have more month? Now, again, those of you that have been listening for a while will know that that's what I say at the end of every episode. And it was based on reading it in the Crushing Debt book, writing it in the Crushing Debt book. And to be honest, to be frank, I don't believe that I got that line from anybody. I believe that I made it up myself. But, again, if you're listening and you said that line before I did and you want me to give you credit for it, let me know. I'll give you credit for it. But that line really stuck with me, especially given what I had gone through, especially given what my clients go through on a daily basis. At the end of the money, they still have a few days left in the month that they're sitting there thinking, gosh, I've got $100 to get me through the next week. I've got $50 to get me through the next week. I'm negative if I don't get paid. That's something my clients go through. And frankly, on some of those months where the law firm maybe has a down month, we have from time to time potentially been in danger of that having been a true statement. In other words, having the money dwindle and then having to get through another week or two of the month. Now, it's always worked out where the law firm's been able to make some money and we've been able to pull out of that situation or avoid that situation. But that line always stuck with me. Do you have more money at the end of the month, or do you have more month at the end of the money? And combining that with budgeting and combining that with the way that I grew up, where dad is the provider for the family. And so I started writing this second book that was all about budgeting. Now, interestingly, the first part of the book was all about mindset and your mindset around your money. And so continued to write. Then I stumbled upon Russell Brunson. And I've talked about Russell Brunson before, and I've talked about, I interviewed Steve Larson, who's one of Russell Brunson's main funnel guys. And Steve Larson now has his own company that prepares funnels for people. And so if you want to go back, find the Steve Larson interview that I did probably within the last dozen or so episodes of this one. And so got into funnels and started reading Traffic Secrets and Expert Secrets and started reading all those books and getting into building funnels. And then I thought, one of the ways to make extra money in the law firm, aside from selling the book, let me create a funnel that sells the book. Let me create an internet landing page, a sales funnel that sells the book. So then I needed to finish the book. And so I sat down and I started to write, and I said, you know what, this book is never going to be done in time for the launch of the sales funnel, and I need to get something out quickly. So let me pull out all the stuff that I talked about in terms of budgeting, and let me make that a book by itself. And as I started to pull that stuff out, I started to realize that it is its own topic. I didn't have to worry about all the mindset stuff and all the money mindset stuff. Let me pull out all the stuff about budgeting. Let me pull out all the stuff of that draft book about how to make money. Let me pull out all the stuff from that draft book about how to reduce expenses, about how to negotiate with creditors. And that was the birth of Become Debt Free. And as I wrote the book and as I started to organize the chapters, everything started to sort of fall into place and everything started to make sense. And so we've got this mindset of I'm the dad, I need to be the provider for my family. We've got this mindset of, how crushing it was for me to have to come home and tell my wife, honey, I think you're going to need to get a job to help us pull through here. Then you've got the story of me starting my law firm and leaving my law firm and starting the new law firm and starting the podcast and creating the book. And then getting into, do you have more money at the end of the month or do you have more month at the end of the money? And then writing the book and then starting the book and then pulling pieces out of the book and creating a new book. And all of that sort of gelled into Become Debt Free. But Become Debt Free wasn't catchy enough for me. It was a good title. It was pretty much the title I had decided on right from the beginning, but it still wasn't catchy enough for me. So I kept looking at it. I kept studying it. I kept writing the book in anticipation of the funnel launch. And then I said, you know what? All of this stuff I have in the book can be implemented pretty quick. So 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, a minute or two here, 20 minutes there. Everything that I have in the book, all the tips and tactics and strategies in the book can all be implemented in less than an hour. And that's when it hit me. Become debt free in less than an hour. So the point of the book is not that you would start reading it now and an hour from now you would be completely debt free. I wish that were the case, but that's not the case. The point of the book is if you start reading now, you can implement the stuff in the book in less than an hour. And then over the course of time, as you stick with those habits, you will become debt free. So in essence, you'll become debt free in less than an hour. Now, a lot of the tactics in the book are things that clients of mine have done successfully that have worked. Other tactics in the book are things that I've done personally that have worked. And so all the tips and all the tricks and all the strategies and all the content in the book is something that has real world application that people have actually used. And so that's all that's contained in the book. So what I wanted to do was sort of go through. I'm not going to go through the entire book. In fact, if you go to the sales funnel, which is SeanMYesner.com/become debt free, you can register for the book. You give me your email address. In exchange, I send you a PDF copy of the book, and you can read the book. Now, if you want, you can continue into the sales funnel where I have other things for sale. All the mindset stuff that I talked about that was the beginning of what was going to be the second book, I took all of that and I put it into a workbook format. And so to go along with the Become Debt Free book, you can get into the mindset of becoming debt free and merge those two things together and become debt free even faster. And so there's a workbook that you can acquire. There's also the audio of the Become Debt Free book. So I'm not going to read the book and I'm not going to go chapter by chapter, because if you want to listen to me narrate the book, you can go to the sales funnel, SeanMYesner.com/become debt free, and you can buy that stuff. So that's the whole purpose of the book. You give me your email address, you get the book for free, and then there's other product that I've created that you can purchase, that you can buy. And so that's the intent of the sales funnel. But I did want to go through some of the pieces of the Become Debt Free book and explain a little bit for you what's in there. So I start out with a section on becoming more educated, because really you can't become debt free until you become more educated about money. Now, I don't teach you to be more educated about money, or I don't teach you the basics of money in this book, but I do give you tips and strategies on how to become more educated. I give you a little bit of insight into checking your credit report so that you're more educated about what your credit report says, because to the extent you can make your score higher, you can get cheaper interest rates, which saves you money in the long run, and the money that you've saved can then be put back to eliminate your debt. So one of the things you definitely want to be more educated about is your credit score, and I talk about that in the educate section of Become Debt Free. I talk a lot about budgeting. It was the premise of what was going to be my second book, and maybe the premise of a third book, who knows, a year or two from now. But I take a lot of concepts that I had already created around budgeting, and I talk about how to become more educated around budgeting. And I give you tips and I give you strategies about how to budget and how to create a budget and how to follow a budget. And so a lot of that is in that educate section of the Become Debt Free book. One of the last things that I want to talk about on this show, but not by far not one of the last things in the book, is talking about habits. So what habits do you have around your money? And some of the things I talk about here are things like, if you have a habit of going to Starbucks every day, well, change your route. Change the route that you drive to work so you don't drive by that Starbucks. Take the temptation away of going to Starbucks. Now, if you cut down going to Starbucks, it may not seem to be very much, but that's $5 a day, which comes out to $25 a week, which comes out to $100 a month. What could you do if you had an extra $100 a month? $1,200. What would you do if you had an extra $1,200 to $1,400 in a year? What could you do with that money? So again, take a look at what your habits are, see what habits are costing you money, and change those habits. Now, is a $5 cup of Starbucks going to break you? Hopefully not. Is a $5 cup of Starbucks going to save you and allow you to become a millionaire? Probably not. But changing that one habit, what other habits can you change that in combination, now you can really start to save a lot of money? And so that's what I talk about in that section of the book. Get educated about the different things and the different ways that you spend your money so that you spend your money better. And I get into tips and tactics and strategies around that. And so that's in the educate section of the book. The next section of the book is all different tips and strategies to increase your income. And so, again, I'm not going to go over everything. I'm not going to go over it in order, and I'm not going to narrate it. But one of the things I talk about is taxes. Now, this was a strategy I successfully implemented personally, and this was a strategy that I talked to a client about yesterday on the telephone, as a matter of fact. So what I talk about here in terms of taxes is, what do you have your employer withhold? Or if you are self-employed, what do you withhold? What kind of a refund do you get at the end of every year? When I was talking to this potential client yesterday on the phone, he was getting tax refunds of between $7,000 and $8,000 a year. Between $7,000 and $8,000 a year. Now, when you think about that, that means that his employer sent an extra $7,000 or $8,000 over the course of a year to the government on his behalf that the government gets to use interest-free from the time they receive it until the time he asks for that refund. So what I did and what I told him to do was change his withholdings so that he does not get as big a refund at the end of the year. So in other words, maybe if you cut your withholdings so that you got an extra $400 in your paycheck, in your take-home pay, so your employer withheld $400 less per month. And so if that's the case, now when you get your tax refund, it's only $3,000 or $4,000. Or $2,500, but you get $400 a month extra in your take-home pay. Now, again, combine that with the strategy of not going to Starbucks anymore. Now you've got $500 extra in your bank account, in your pocket every month. You could take $250 of that and put it in savings. You could take $250 of that and apply it to a debt. You can pay down your debt faster. You can increase your savings, and you could even put it in an account or an investment that earns interest. So again, taking a look at your tax strategy, my goal every year is to pay as little in tax and get as little in a refund as possible. And so if I see that I've got a lot of money being withheld, maybe I can change my withholdings to take home more pay, withhold less from my pay. It's a smaller tax refund at the end of the year, but it's more money in my paycheck every week, every month, every pay period. And so that's a great strategy that you can save a huge chunk of money. Now, I would also suggest that you do this with your CPA. So talk to your CPA, do the tax analysis, make sure that you're not going to withhold so much that you have to pay a couple $1,000s to the IRS at the end of the year. But if you're getting big refunds, you can change your withholdings so that your refund goes down, but your take-home pay goes up. You have more in the bank at the end of the month. And again, just using those two strategies, getting rid of Starbucks and adjusting your withholdings, in this guy's particular case, could be an extra $500 in his checking account every single month. So that's one way to increase your income. Another thing that I talk about to increase your income is a side hustle. And so again, a side job, not necessarily a full-time second job, but something that you can do on the side. Something like a podcast that monetizes, something like writing books that you can sell, something like teaching different courses where you have some area of knowledge or area of expertise where you can get paid for teaching those courses. All of these things, by the way, are things that I do. So again, they're not generating thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands. I would love for Crushing Debt and Become Debt-Free to be bestsellers, and I would love for them to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but I get it. I'm not that kind of an author. And so, while I hope that that's what they do, I have a realistic expectation of what the books are going to do in terms of sales. But, at the end of the day, it's some money to buy presents for my kids. It's enough money to take the family out to dinner one night. It's enough money to buy myself something. It's enough money to buy my wife a present, buy one of my kids a present. It's not going to, make us rich and cause us to retire early, but it's another few bucks in my pocket. So what kind of side hustle? What do you have as an area of expertise that you can monetize and sell to other people in your spare time to make some additional money? The last thing that I do to increase income, one of the last things that I'm going to talk about on this show, although there's a lot more strategies in the book, is to sell products. Now, what I mean is products like I said, the books, podcast sponsorships, all that kind of stuff. But also, what things do you have laying around? So my son is very much into Pokemon cards, and I've started to teach him that by selling those Pokemon cards, he can take that money and apply it to buying other Pokemon cards. I've got football cards. I've got an idea to start up an eBay website where I can sell my football cards, where I can sell my son's Pokemon cards. What things around the house do you have to sell? When there are garage sales in your neighborhood, do you participate? A couple episodes ago, I talked about the garage sale that we had here recently, and I was able to make enough money to buy my son's birthday cake that day and buy a bucket of shaved ice for my son and his friends who came over for the party that day. So the garage sale paid for the party. So what other products do you have that you can sell? What things laying around the house haven't you looked at in months and months and months that may be valuable to somebody else that you can put up on eBay or put up on a neighborhood swap or put up somewhere as an advertisement that you could sell and make an additional few dollars? And again, what I'm hoping that you all see is that as all these things continue to add up, so the $5 Starbucks that creates $100 a month, adjusting your withholdings to take home $400 extra a month, creating a side hustle where maybe you get a check for $100 every month or two from sales of books and products, selling stuff on eBay where maybe you make $50 to $100 in a month. So that's 100 plus 400 is 500, 600, 700. Now we're up to $700 a month in additional income that you receive. What could you do with that? What would your life look like if you had an extra $700 laying around at the end of every month? How much debt could you pay off? How quickly could you pay off your debt? How quickly could you get out of your student loan debt if you had an extra $700 laying around at the end of the month? The third section of the book is all about reducing your expenses. And so, again, everything sort of goes hand in hand. I've always been of the understanding that there's two ways to get more money in your pocket. Number one is to increase your income. Number two is to decrease your expenses. So what kind of expenses can you decrease that'll put more money in your pocket? Well, some of the stuff I talk about in the book, cutting the cord, cutting the cable cord. And so my cable bill is about $265 a month. Now I can get internet for about $70, and I can get YouTube TV, which gives me all the cable channels, for about $50. So I could take a $265 cable bill. In fact, I'm in the process of doing it now. A $265 cable bill and reduce it to about $120 to $130 bill for television and internet. Now, again, is that $135 savings going to add up or going to make me rich beyond my wildest dreams? No, but it is going to add up. So remember, based on getting educated, based on changing habits, based on side hustles, based on tax withholdings, based on all that stuff, I'm up to about $700. Well, if I can cut another $130 by cutting the cable cord, now I'm up to $830 extra at the end of the month. And I haven't really done anything. I've added a couple of hobby projects, and I've changed a couple of tax withholdings, and I've changed a couple of expenses, and all of that has generated me now $830 extra dollars at the end of the month. What could you do with an extra $830 at the end of the month? One of the other ways that I reduce expenses is I cancel subscriptions. What a lot of people don't realize is you get these subscriptions, whether it's subscriptions to newsletters, subscriptions to magazines, subscriptions for, like Netflix even, subscriptions like video game subscriptions. What kind of subscriptions do you have? What kind of magazines do you have laying on the coffee table? Subscriptions are another one of those things that you could unwittingly be spending $300, $400, $500 on subscriptions. And so again, canceling subscriptions by themselves is not going to dig you out of a debt hole. But if I could cut a whole bunch of subscriptions to magazines I no longer read that I just automatically renew and automatically come out of my credit card statement, well, now I've done two things. Number one, I've generated some money that I can turn around and pay to my credit card. And number two, I'm not adding to my credit card every month, so I'm reducing the interest that I have to pay on my credit card every month. And so what if I were able to cut another $200 from my budget by just canceling subscriptions, and now I'm over $1,000 a month in savings. And I've been talking now for almost 30 minutes, and I'm already down $1,000 a month. I've already increased my take-home budget by $1,000 a month. How many of you can do that? All of you can do that. It just takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of study. So again, canceling subscriptions. And then something I talk about in the same vein as habits is stopping the vices. And so I talk about this in the book in terms of, as a bankruptcy attorney, I've been able to get people to stop paying so much for food. Now, again, don't cut food out altogether, but maybe you cut down on the sweets. Maybe you cut down on the beer. Maybe you cut down on the cigarettes. Maybe you cut down on some of those other things that are not so much good for you. Maybe you pick up vices that are better for you. Maybe you pick up running, where all you need to do is buy shoes every 6 months. And so again, if you're spending $100 a month on cigarettes, and a good pair of running shoes will cost you $150 every 6 months, now again, you're saving $300 or $400 every month just by stopping a vice like smoking and getting a good habit like running. You're saving yourself $200 or $300 a month. And so now I'm up to about $1,200 or $1,300 a month that I've saved you by combining all these different strategies. And so what vices can you eliminate? Again, so you want to get educated, you want to increase your income, you want to decrease your expenses. And any one of these things will probably save you some money. But where the real power of the Become Debt Free book comes in is it's telling you to do these things in combination. And so just talking to you for the last half hour or so, we've been able to generate about $1,200 a month. $1,200 a month extra. Now we're getting into some serious money. $1,200 a month becomes $13,000 or more, almost $14,000 in a year. So again, what things can you do in combination to start to educate yourself, reduce expenses, increase your income? The last thing I talk about in the book is once you've saved up all this money, once you've been able to generate all this stuff in your budget, now you need to eliminate your debt. And so how do you go about eliminating your debt to actually become debt-free? And again, I'm not talking about everything I have in the book. I'm not talking about everything in any particular order other than the order of the 4 sections of the book. All I'm talking about are my top tips within each subsection. So if you really want to get rid of your debt, the first step, I think, always is to call your creditor. See what kind of plans the creditor provides. Maybe the creditor can offer you some kind of payment plan on your debt. You put the card away, you stop charging on your card, you use some of these tactics to make a couple of $100 extra every month, you apply that to your credit cards, and now you're becoming debt-free. So what things can you do to help yourself become debt-free? Number one on my list, you call the creditor and you talk to the creditor about what the creditor can do. If the creditor can't help you, maybe you can set up a payment plan. And so instead of sending one lump sum to pay off your debt, maybe you budget and you put yourself on a payment plan, whether it's with the creditor's permission or not. And so okay, I've been able to generate $600 extra a month. I'm going to take $300 of that, and I'm going to take that extra money and I'm going to apply it to my debt. I'm going to take the other $300 and I'm going to put it in savings. Or I'm going to take $550 and apply it to the debt and put $50 in savings. Or I'm going to take all $600 and apply it to the debt. And when the debt is gone, I'm going to take all $600 and put it in savings. But if you've created that additional money for yourself by using the techniques in the book and using techniques from many other sources, now you're really making a dent in your credit and in the amount of credit that you owe. The last two techniques is actually one subsection of the book here, and that's the avalanche and snowball method. Now, they're very, very similar. In one of them, what you're doing is you're paying the debt that you owe the least on first. And the concept there is you're going to pay off that creditor faster because that's the lower balance. And so let's say you throw an extra $200 at that first creditor and you pay that credit card down in 10 months. Well, now you take the extra $200 that you were throwing at credit card number one, plus whatever the minimum payment was you were paying on credit card number one. You take all that and you apply it to the next lowest balance. And so now maybe you're sending an extra $450 to credit card number two. And then you pay off credit card number two. The payment on credit card number two, let's say, was another $250. So now you're taking $600 and you're applying it at credit card number three. Now, while you're paying down credit cards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, you're still paying the minimum balances. But what I'm saying is you take all the extra money that you have and you throw it at the lowest balance card first. When you paid that one off, you take all of that money plus the minimum payment on card number two, throw all of that at card number two. And over time, you will pay off the debt. Now, the good part about that method, the part that I really like about that method, if you start with the lowest balance cards first, you'll have a sense of accomplishment. You'll have a sense of victory when that first card is paid off. And it'll be more exciting to you to attack card number two and then card number 3 and 4 and however many you have. The other method is the same kind of thing. You throw all your extra money at one card. You pay the minimum payments on all the others. But instead of looking at which is the lowest balance card, you look at which is the highest interest rate card. And the reason you look at which is the highest interest rate card is because the higher the interest rate, the more you're paying in interest. So the faster you can pay that one off, the less interest you will accrue, the more money you will save. And so, again, the avalanche method, the snowball method, calling your creditors, negotiating payment plans, all these are strategies to get rid of your debt. There are a ton more. There's 30 plus strategies in the Become Debt Free book about how to do all this stuff. I've only gone over 12 of them, but there's at least 20 more in the book that you can use to, again, educate yourself, increase your income, decrease your expenses, and then knock out your debt. And so that's my hope. My hope for you is that you take some of the tactics that are in the book. You don't necessarily need to do them all. That'd be a lot of time. But you take some of the tactics in the book, you combine them so that you accelerate this saving of money. You use that money to then attack your debt. And is it going to happen in an hour? No. But all these strategies can be implemented in an hour so that you become debt-free. What I would love for all of you to do is to go to the website where you can pick up your free copy of the book. Again, you need to give me your email address because I'd love to build up my email address, but then you can pick up the book for free. It is www.seanmyesner.com. My middle name is Michael, so seanmyesner.com/become debt free. Get your free copy of the book. Check out the rest of the stuff that I have for sale in the funnel. If you do pick up the book, I would love for you to leave me a review. That would be great social proof, great social media, about the book if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, please give me the feedback, because I do want to continue to tweak the book and make it better for everybody. So I would love if you could help me with that. I think that'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. Again, if you want to pick up the book for free, I will be putting the book up on Amazon. Hopefully by the time this episode comes out, the book will be up on Amazon. Now I'm going to charge for it to be on Amazon. I'm not saying that because I want you to go and spend money and buy the book. I'm saying that because I want people's email addresses so I can build my email list, and I want people to pick up the book for free. But I will be charging for it on Amazon, so on Kindle. So again, SeanMYesner.com/become debt free. I would love for you all to grab a copy of the book for free. I would love for you all to give me some feedback on what you think about the book. If there's any tactics I've forgotten, anything that's not in there, anything you think I should add, definitely please feedback to me and let me know. Share the book on social media. That would be great. Share the website, share the funnel on social media. That would be fantastic. I appreciate all of your listening. And as started by the Crushing Debt book and the Crushing Debt podcast, I hope that at the end of the month you have more money rather than at the end of the money you have more month. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate all of your listening. Go pick up a copy of the book at SeanMYesner.com/become debt free. And we will talk to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.